All right, today we're stepping right behind the velvet rope. This explainer is going to serve as an expose into a heavily guarded financial playbook. We're talking about a system architected by and completely for the ultra-wealthy. It's a strategy that fundamentally flips everything you thought you knew about money, debt, and taxes completely upside down.
So, let me just ask you this directly. What do you think is a billionaire's absolute smartest financial decision? Think about what your parents told you growing up. They probably advised you to stay out of debt at all costs, right? Financial advisors practically beg us to pay off our credit cards. Experts have built massive, multi-million-dollar empires just by convincing the public that debt is the ultimate enemy. And you know what? For the average person, that is absolutely true. But there's a secret the financial elite definitely do not broadcast. Okay, let's dive into this. For the world's wealthiest families, the smartest financial decision they can possibly make is to borrow millions, and sometimes literally billions of dollars and never ever pay it back. Not because they can't afford to, obviously, but because keeping those loans unpaid is actually a perfectly legal, highly effective wealth-building system. It's a strategy known as buy, borrow, die, and wealthy families have been quietly using it for over 100 years to amass fortunes and pass them down across generations, completely untouched by the taxman.
Part 1. The debt illusion, and how the system traps the middle class.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast in reality. To truly grasp the billionaire's playbook, we first have to shatter this illusion of debt. Debt itself isn't actually the problem. The problem is how the middle class has been conditioned to use it. The middle class borrows to buy depreciating assets, and they pay that debt back with money that has already been taxed. Billionaires, on the other hand, they borrow against assets that are going up in value, and the money they pull out is entirely tax-free. Let's look at exactly how this trap is set for the average person.
Let's say you just need a car to get to work. So you take out a $15,000 loan from the bank at a 6% interest rate. Bam, you are immediately hit by a triple threat. First, you're paying that 6% interest. Second, the very second you drive that car off the lot, it starts losing value, right? In 3 years, it's maybe only worth $9,000, but you are still paying interest on the original $15,000. And third, and this is the absolute worst part, to pay that loan back, you go to work, you earn a salary, and the government takes, let's say, 24% in taxes right off the top. You are paying a bank for an asset that is losing value, using money that the government has already heavily taxed. It's literally a financial treadmill. The faster you run, the faster the treadmill moves. But the rich, they're playing a completely different game.
Step 1. Buy assets. The true foundation of wealth. It all starts right here with buying the right assets. This is where most people get the strategy totally wrong. You can't just walk into a bank and borrow millions of dollars against your car, your watch collection, or your old baseball cards. Banks demand high-quality collateral. The assets must be stable, incredibly easy to value, guaranteed to appreciate over the long term, and highly liquid. This is exactly why the ultra-wealthy heavily invest in publicly traded stocks, prime real estate, and highly profitable businesses. Historically, the stock market returns around 10% annually, and prime real estate consistently climbs. To a bank, these aren't just assets. They're measurable, predictable, and highly bankable guarantees.
But here is the crucial mechanism that makes banks literally eager to hand over their money. It's called the loan-to-value, or LTV, ratio. Listen, billionaires do not borrow 100% of their net worth. If they have $50 million in assets, they only ask the bank for maybe $5 million or $10 million. By keeping this LTV ratio incredibly low, they make the loan virtually risk-free for the lender. The bank knows that no matter what happens, their money is perfectly safe. And because of this, the bank gives the billionaire incredibly favorable terms. We're talking sometimes just 2 or 3% interest with absolutely no mandatory monthly principal payments.
Step 2. Borrow. Never sell. Unlocking cash without triggering taxes.
And this brilliantly illustrates the second and arguably most fascinating act of this strategy, unlocking cash without ever triggering a tax bill. The math behind this magic is actually really simple. Imagine you have a $10 million portfolio and you need $500,000 to live on for the year. If you sell your stocks to get that cash, the IRS immediately steps in. You'll be hit with a 20% capital gains tax. So to actually pocket your $500,000, you have to sell over $600,000 worth of your assets, permanently losing out on their future growth. But if you borrow that $500,000 against your portfolio at a 3% interest rate, you pay exactly 0 in capital gains tax. 0. The IRS doesn't consider borrowed money to be income. You keep all your shares, your assets keep growing, and your only cost is $15,000 in interest.
Let's actually look at how this plays out over a decade. Let's say you took out a $10 million loan against a $30 million portfolio. Over 10 years, you just pay the interest, say $300,000 a year. Meanwhile, you never touch the principal, and your assets continue to compound in the background. At the end of those 10 years, your $30 million portfolio might have grown to $60 million, and you haven't paid a single cent in capital gains tax. If you need to pay off the loan, you simply go back to the bank, show them your shiny new $60 million balance sheet, and refinance. You take out a new $20 million loan, pay off the old $10 million one, and walk away with another $10 million in fresh, tax-free liquidity. The cycle just seamlessly repeats.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're looking at this and wondering, but wait, what if the market crashes? What happens to this grand strategy during a severe economic downturn? Does the billionaire suddenly lose everything?
Well, the answer is 60%. Because billionaires maintain such a low loan-to-value ratio, remember, they're borrowing maybe $10 million against a $30 million portfolio, the market would literally have to crash by more than 60% before the bank even begins to sweat. We are talking about a Great Depression-level global financial meltdown here. And even if that does happen, these loans are backed by diversified, historically proven assets, not risky meme stocks or volatile crypto. The mathematical odds of a default are astonishingly low.
Step 3. The death loophole, the ultimate tax reset.
So they buy, they borrow, they refinance. But obviously, all human lives end. And that event triggers a 100-year-old secret in the U.S. tax code that makes this entire system utterly flawless. It's legally known as the step-up in basis. This single tax provision is the absolute core of the billionaire's playbook. When you pass away, the IRS legally resets the original purchase price, the cost basis, of your assets to whatever their market value is on the exact day of your death. It legally wipes out decades of capital gains taxes in a single heartbeat.
Let's move on and see how this builds over a lifetime. Year 1. You buy a stock for $1 million. Year 50. You've held it, you've borrowed against it, and it's now worth $20 million. If you sold it while alive, you'd owe massive capital gains on $19 million of pure profit. But on the day of your death, the IRS resets the cost basis to $20 million. The very next day, your heirs inherit those shares. If they sell them immediately for $20 million, their taxable profit is absolutely zero. That $19 million taxable gain, it legally vanishes into thin air. No joke. So the crucial point is this magnificent, unending cycle. You buy appreciating assets, you borrow against them your entire life, living entirely tax-free. When you pass away, the tax basis resets. Your heirs can then sell a small, completely tax-free portion of those newly stepped-up assets to pay off whatever bank loans were left over. They inherit the rest of the massive fortune, free and clear, and they just restart the exact same process for the next generation.
The real game of wealth and escaping the income trap.
I know, this almost sounds like a Hollywood script about financial loopholes, but to truly understand the real game of wealth, we have to look at how this is being executed right now, today, by some of the most powerful people on the planet. Because this is not theoretical. Elon Musk famously borrows billions of dollars against his shares in Tesla to fund his endeavors without triggering massive tax events. Larry Ellison does the exact same thing with his shares in Oracle. They aren't cashing out their equity and handing 20% over to the government. They're simply leveraging their assets, accessing pure liquidity, and letting their immense equity compound uninterrupted. The system rewards ownership, plain and simple.
Which leaves us with this massive paradigm shift. We are taught to chase a higher salary, right? To work harder and harder for a bigger paycheck. But the system is inherently designed to tax income at the highest possible rates. True, generational wealth isn't about how much income you can earn. It is entirely about what assets you own. You simply cannot execute buy, borrow, die on a paycheck. So as you look at your own financial future, you really have to ask yourself, are you spending your life running on the treadmill of income, or are you building the foundation of ownership?